You're listening to Keith Engle, the host of TGI Sports Talk on the National Streaming Sports Roku channel.
Football season is here, and SeatGeek is my go-to for buying tickets. Now with SeatGeek, every single ticket is backed with their buyer guarantee. We've all had plans change, and when you can't make it to the big game, SeatGeek has you covered. They're the only ticketer that allows you to return your tickets ahead of the event for credit with SeatGeek swaps. So when things come up, I know that my tickets won't go to waste. So what are you waiting for? Download the SeatGeek app to maximize your possibilities and shop live events with confidence.
Good morning, everybody. Keith Engle here for TGI Sports Talks, one-on-one with Keith Engle. My guest this morning is scheduled to be Mike Westhoff. Great special teams coach with the Dolphins, the Jets, the Saints, the Broncos. Long career in college and pro football. Coach with some of the greats. Frank Kush didn't make it great on the pro level. We'll talk to Mike about that. Coach with John Shula, with Jimmy Johnson, with Rex Ryan, is he a great? I don't know. But we'll talk to Mike about his. He's got a great book out called Figure It Out, My 32-Year Journey While Revolutionizing a Pro Football Special Team. So we'll wait for Mike. Mike's not with us yet. I just messaged his assistant, and she's giving him a buzz. So hopefully Mike Westhoff will join us here in a few minutes. While we're waiting, I want to thank everybody for watching this morning on where are we watching? On Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, or X. We're live on Roku on the National Streaming Sports Network. Hopefully you're getting those apps downloaded. Great stuff there. I want to thank the groups that allow me to share. As always, John Gonzalez, the Sports Authority, is one of the best groups out there. I know a lot of you guys have joined and participate, so please continue to do so. Greg Rawlings with his football and his baseball groups. Again, America's Pastime, which won't necessarily apply for today's show, but he's got pro football sites as well as college. And who else? The Flo and the Gang at Bottom Line Sports, big supporter of this show, and we support them. Go check out their podcast, which is live. They do live on Let's Talk Sports, who's still a good friend of this. Speaking of which, thumbs up, DDH. Who started Let's Talk Sports, and Tanner D's doing a great job continuing that. Lots of great shows over there. I just got a message that Mike is popping in as we speak, so we'll finish up here. Ralph Williams, quick shout out to him at RW Media. Ralph does some great stuff there in Pittsburgh, including the Sports Corner he does every Tuesday from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern with Smoking Jim Frazier. Been on that show many times and have a blast all the time. Expect to be on before the draft as well. What else? Next week we'll have a guest, Kevin Bryan, who's written a book, which I don't have the name of in front of me right now. I apologize, Kevin. But it is about the NFL and how teams gain a competitive edge and how they go about doing that. So we'll have Kevin on next week at 9 a.m. and then we'll have we're lining up guests. We're full for March, and we'll cover those in just a minute. I did see Mike just pop in the studio, so we'll bring him in a second. Let me give him a quick intro. A lot of you know Mike Westhoff, many years, 32 years, according to the title of his book. Again, that book is Figure It Out, My 32-Year Journey While Revolutionizing Pro Football Special Teams. Mike has had a long career through college, into the pros, and again, one of the great special team players in the history of football. And I'm frozen again. What is going on with StreamYard? I know that you guys don't see me frozen, but give me a second. I don't know what'll happen when Mike and I are both doing this. Give me 1 second. Frustrating. Anyway, we'll have Mike in. I'm going to bring Mike in right now. And Mike will talk about his life. He's had some health issues through life and persevered through it all. And we've been looking forward to this interview for a while. And I welcome in Mike Westhoff this morning. Good morning, Mike.
Morning. How you doing?
I am doing fabulous. It's great to have you on. I know we've talked here and there, and I've talked with Denise on and off, and I'm glad we finally got you on. And sorry you're not busy coaching football still. That is
No,
that
no, that's frankly, it's enough for me. I've yeah, my last I got to 700 games. Actually, I was one short of that, to tell you the truth, which bothers me because I kind of like that 700 number. But
that would be nice. Well,
yeah, it was good. So I had a lot of NFL games. Yes, I did.
Sean will let you come back for one game, won't he?
No, he and I aren't exactly on the same page right now.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
It's just different. When I left, it's a contract issue, and it's a little complex, but it'll resolve itself.
Everything resolves itself, right? Mike, listen, you've had quite a life when you look back on it. When you were growing up, and you grew up in Pennsylvania, football player. Your dad was a coach.
My father was a little league type coach. Yes.
Okay,
Other than that, he was actually a very good athlete himself. And matter of fact, Dan Marino broke all of my father's City of Pittsburgh high school records. My dad held them till Dan broke. They went to the same school, Central Catholic in Pittsburgh, and Dan broke my dad's record. So my father was actually a very good player.
Was he here? Was he still here to see that happen?
Oh yeah, sure, of course, yeah. He went when I was coaching at Miami. He came down. He lived in Pittsburgh, and he came down. We played golf together, Dan and my father and I, and it was pretty cool. It was a great experience for him, and he was a big fan of Dan's, obviously, and having gone to the same high school, it was really a great day.
I'm sure your dad was a big influence on you as a kid. Did you have any other outside influences at that point before you go to college that kind of were driving you in a certain direction?
Yeah, I was when we grew up. I grew up in the city, in a kind of a row house, and so it wasn't like it was in the suburbs. and though baseball was such a big sport for us, when I was a kid, and I was a big Pittsburgh Pirate fan. So I can remember my dad taking me for a couple dollars. We could sit in left field, actually right field, excuse me, at down in Pittsburgh, and watch Roberto Clemente. Though I loved it. I was a big fan, and we grew up watching those guys and trying to emulate that. And we were all actually very good baseball players. And then I went on to play football, and the Steelers were somebody that I really revered. Now, they weren't really very good when I was real young, I was a fan. But then when I was got a little older in college, et cetera, and they, drafted Joe Green and Chuck Noll became the famous coach. Then, and so it was just a big thing in my community. I had a high school coach, man named Dan Galbraith. He was a very, very good coach and meant a lot to me. And it was something that I was young for when I started high school, because my parents, they got married very young.
Yeah.
Put me in school when I was like 3 years old, I think. I teased them. And so I was always a little bit behind in that regard. So here I'm a sophomore in high school, and I'm the youngest kid in the class. But I figured it out. And I was the first sophomore that started at our high school ever. I was the first. And we were good. When I was a senior, we were undefeated. We were arguably maybe the best team in the state. We were a very good football team. And he had a big influence on me. He was great. He guided me, he pushed me. He helped me along a lot. And it was a tremendous experience. And so that became an avenue for me. We didn't have a lot of money. And for me to be able to go to college, no one in my family ever went. I needed a scholarship. Though here I'm this, skinny little 13-year-old kid. But I figured it out. I was pretty tough. I was a tough kid. I could play. I could hit. I grew up fighting, in the neighborhood that's where I pretty much grew up. So I learned how to do those things. And I became a pretty good player. Not great by any means, not great, but pretty good. And could certainly start on anywhere I went. And so I was able to go to college and play and then move on from there. And, it just became a big part of my life. So those are people that meant a big, big difference to me.
Yeah, tell us about, as you obviously figured it out, to use your term. I love that term, by the way. It's very catchy, and you end up using catchy terms a lot. So I don't know if I'll owe you royalties every time I say it now.
No.
Figuring it out.
Please mention it. Keep mentioning it. Somebody will go out and get it.
I will. And again, I had the book up, and then when we'll put it up. I'll find a way to get up here while
I can put it up.
Okay, good. I had it, and then when I had to leave the studio for a second, because StreamYard keeps freezing on me the last 2 weeks, I don't know why, and then I got to pop out and pop back in. If that happens, don't get nervous. By the way, real quick, before I move on, I've said some good mornings. This is how far we carry your story today, over to the UK. We got a bunch of fans in the UK. Michael Gott is here from the UK this morning. And
that's great.
guys, we'll get to all your questions, so keep putting the comments in, and I'll probably go back before we get done with Mike, and we'll go back and answer them all for sure if we haven't already covered them. Mike, you talk about figuring it out, and you figured it out in college. I'm sorry, in high school. And you had some offers, a few offers to go to different schools. What takes you and what kind of culture shock, I guess, did you experience going from Pittsburgh to Wyoming to start out your college?
No, it's a good question. Several things. First of all, I would have loved to have been able to stay home and go to Pitt.
Yeah.
But there was a coach there that liked me, and he saw me. I was young. I was only 17 years old.
Right.
I didn't graduate till I graduated at 17. I mean, I turned 17 in January of my senior year in high school. So, I'm very young. My father was a great big man, so I knew eventually I'd get big enough, to play, et cetera, et cetera. But they ended up, I was interested, and they turned me down. The school that I really liked that I looked at was Virginia Tech. I liked their coaches. I really was very interested in going to school there. And at the last second, they turned me down. So here I am a little disappointed. I visited Louisville. I talked to Arizona that I liked. And I really liked a coach from Wyoming, a guy named Paul Roach. He was a gentleman. He was smart. He ended up coaching in the NFL for a long time. He was a very good coach. And he kind of looked at me and saw where he believed I would be, not necessarily where I was. And I liked that. I just liked he was a and to tell you the truth, he was right. He was right. He figured it out. And so there was a part of me that kind of always wanted to be a cowboy. There's just something about me. I still love it. Tell you the truth, Jackson Hole, I go probably 3-4 times a year. I own a truck that I keep out there and a big trailer, and I have 4 snowmobiles, and we travel all over Jackson Hole snowmobiling in the winter. I do it all the time. In fact, I just got back not too long ago. I went out and spent about 10 days. But anyway, that appealed to me. So out of nowhere, and you're right about culture shock. You're right about that. And so off I went. And I think my first day at college, I'll put up with anybody's first day. I don't care who they are. I'll put mine up. My father came to me one day and he said, Mike, he said, we never got to travel much as a family, to go on vacations and things. We were playing baseball and things like that, working. And he said, this would be a good chance for you to see the country. So he gave me a Continental Trailways bus ticket. And so for 30 some hours, I rode the bus to Laramie, Wyoming. And when I got in there, it was Sunday morning. Now, I had been on the bus since Friday night. My girlfriend gave me a little box of brownies. That was my big treat. And I had one suitcase. So I get off the bus. It's cold. I'm out in the middle of nowhere. I'm thinking, where in the hell am I? And this guy picks me up, and a couple other guys that were on the train, on the bus, in a pickup truck. So we go over and we go to this dorm, and I get out of the truck, and I'm walking in the dorm. And he said, where are you going? I said, well, I'm just going in the dorm to check in. He said, put your bag down right there. And he said, get over to the field house and get some equipment before it's all gone. I'm thinking to myself, it's all gone. This is college, isn't it? I'm supposed to be real. No physical. So I go over to no trainer, no physical, no doctor, just equipment. I put a helmet on. I thought I could spin it around in my head. It was so big. The shoes didn't fit. It was just one of those miserable times. I'm in a locker room with about 30, maybe 40 other guys, Sunday morning getting dressed. His coach comes in, a guy named Bill Baker. He comes in and introduced himself, and we start talking to everybody. And he said, we got a lot of guys here. He said, we'll start officially tomorrow. He said, but we might as well get out and get a practice in. I'm thinking, I just been on a bus for 30 some hours. I'm going to get a practice? This can't be legal. This cannot be legal. So, okay, sure as hell. So we go out on the field, they had these young coaches, young guys, former college players. And they were all gung-ho. we did a bunch of calisthenics, and all we did was drills and conditioning and run around and knock the heck out of each other. We just ran collision drills and double, you name it. We did. It was the stupidest thing. It was crazy. And so I got in 3 fights. My nose was bleeding. I'm thinking, where the hell am I? I was maybe going to go to church, and here I'm practicing. So I get in the shower. I go back, and there's my suitcase in the middle of the sidewalk. And I haven't even checked in the dorm. That's my first day at college.
I would say that's got to top probably anybody else I could ask that question.
I think that's going to be at the risk. But that's how I started. And from there, it just progressed, and it went on and moved in different directions.
It was some great stories. That's one of the great stories I read in the book. When I read the book, I was like, that's early in the book, too. And
Yes.
That's an amazing story for sure. Yeah, there were some great, people don't think about Wyoming necessarily when we talk about college football, but some pretty good players came out of there.
Oh, man. At that time, it was a little bit kind of crazy what they were doing. Back then, the freshmen weren't eligible.
Right.
Back then, freshmen weren't, you kind of had a little freshman team. And then there were a number of limited scholarships. And so they had 30, whatever it was. But we had on scholarship nearly 100 freshmen.
Yeah.
Almost 100. I mean, we had a team. We lined up the first day. I was lined up like an outside linebacker, and I was in a line. I couldn't hardly see the front. I'm thinking, those guys. And I looked behind me. I said, those guys must be really bad. They're back there. Here I am. But I hung in there and I started. We were great. We were undefeated. Our freshmen. We killed everybody. We beat the Air Force Academy, I think 50-0. We were just good. But they had brought these guys. Jim Kick was there. They had Bobby Allward. They had Pedro Billingsley. I think he was the number 1 pick at the Chargers. They were just good. They were a good football team.
Wasn't Vic Washington, Dave Hampton? They both had
they both played with me.
Yeah,
they played on my team. They were our 2 running backs. Please, they would put me in the block a little bit, like a tight end. Anybody could block for those guys. Just get in the road. They were so good, and they were really. And that's who was there. Jim Kick. This was a good football team. They went first year. They went down to Sun Bowl and beat somebody, and then the second year they went to the Sugar Bowl, and I think lost to LSU in a great game. They were a good football team.
That is good.
Anyway, so it was. I still love it. I love that part of the country. It's an area that I still go to right now, even all the time. I made it a part of my life.
What led to the circumstances from you leaving Wyoming and moving on to?
They were so they were just, it was tough what they were doing, and it just wasn't fair, and it just sat very poorly with me. Toward the end, after spring ball, they told all the freshmen we had a time to be at the field house to meet with the coach, Lloyd Eaton. So I get over, there's a big line, everybody's waiting to go see him, and basically what he's doing, they were cutting guys. They just cut everybody. Like I went in and I sat with them. And he was telling me things that I did well and things I didn't do well. And he was, talking to me about getting bigger, doing this. And I said, I'm working on it. I haven't even turned 18 yet. Give me a break. Anyway, he said, we're going to keep 23 freshman football players. We're going to keep 23 on scholarship.
Out of 100.
Out of 100. Yeah. And he said, and by the way, you're number 23. I'll never forget it. That's what he told me. Now, I knew I could end up playing. I was going to be redshirted. He was going to redshirt me. And I got discouraged. I got disgusted. And I thought, I'm going to leave. And I talked to a coach at Pitt, and that guy said, that's right, I wanted to go back. And he was excited. But then before it ever got a chance to happen, he went to another school, and I lost my chance to go there. But anyway, I had just got frustrated with it. And I wanted the chance to look around and see if I could find another place. And I ended up at Wichita with actually Bill Parcells was coaching there then, because they were really making a move to their basketball had done tremendously, and they were making a move to get bigger, and so it was, and they offered me a scholarship, so it was pretty cool. And then I had a crazy time there. I show up there, I go in the first day there, and I go in. The head coach was George Karras. He had been a New England guy. He had coached at Boston College and at West Point, things like that. He eventually went out to the Raiders, and he became Al Davis's right-hand man. And he was at the NFL forever with the Raiders. But anyway, I'm sitting in his office, and he said, if you could play at Wyoming, they're pretty good. He said, we're anxious to have you here. And he said, you'll be redshirted. You're not this whole year, give you a year to grow and develop, which is what I needed. It was exactly what I had to have. And then I could catch up to everybody. I would get bigger and stronger. And he said, you know what, though? He said, I really don't know that much about you. He said, I'll tell you what, I'll make you a deal. Here's the deal. He said, we start school in 2 weeks, or maybe it's like 12 days. And he said, you're going to practice against the varsity every day, wherever I put you. He said, after that time, you'll come back to my office. And he had my scholarship there, which I signed. And he said, I'll sign the scholarship or I'll give you a plane ticket home. I said, well, that's my first day at college. So that goes right down. We had an equipment man, an old guy named Phil, was my buddy, became my friend. And I went in to see him. I said, okay. I introduced myself. I said, here's what I have to have. And I told him I wanted a particular type helmet. And I wanted a couple little things. I said, because I'm going to fight everybody on this field. I said, you're going to not see anyone like me. I said, so get ready. I said, second after it was the second day, I was walking off the field and Karras came by me and he said, swing by the office and pick up your scholarship. He said, I signed it after the first practice. And I went on to be captain, most valuable player, and I figured it out. But it wasn't easy. I had no easy ways. I had to fight for everything. So I kind of like it.
We'll get to a lot of these comments later, but
that's pretty cool. Honest to goodness, if I had learned the skills of skating, I would have loved to have been a hockey player. I would have loved it.
It sounds like it.
I was a big fan. I still am. I just love the way those guys play. But I'm not the skater. I don't know anything about that, so it never happened.
You're a big hockey fan. You're in Tampa most of the time, right? Is that right?
No, I live in Fort Myers. I tell you what, I love it and I love to go, but I'm not. And I don't know. It's hard to follow on television for me.
Yeah, it's hard. It is.
Hockey, you either know it or you're not sure of it. And I'm in that not sure of it class. When I get to go, like I was in Denver, I went several times to the games. Oh, I loved it.
Do you have a team you're for, Mike?
Pardon me?
Do you have a team that you follow yourself?
No. Well, I kind of like Florida a little bit. I kind of follow those guys because I lived there, and I like, and they're good now. They're playing very well. So I got to follow them in the playoffs a little bit. But on television, honest to goodness, I get lost.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find it. And it's just hard for me. To go to the game, oh my goodness, it's tremendous.
That's a great person.
A couple times in New York, when I was there, I got to go watch the Rangers play. And I really loved that. That was a lot of fun.
It's a great in-person sport. Not to get too far off topic here, but it's a great in-person sport because there's a lot less stoppages in play than other sports for sure. And it's just it's fun to watch in person for sure.
Oh, I'm a big fan in person. On television, I'm trying to find it. So that's just me. Whereas our game, the National Football League, is the perfect game for television.
Oh my God, yes.
I mean, we figured it out. I mean, they've got the replay. Everybody knows what's going on. You can really be a fan and become exceptionally knowledgeable by watching a game on television. You can really you can really know what's happening.
Do you to go back to your time at Wichita State? You said you met Bill Parcells. At what point, as you finish out your college playing career, and you met guys like Bill Parcells, who became a great coach, obviously. When did you start thinking coaching is the direction I want to go?
That's a good question. I thought about it then because as I developed as a player, I was pretty smart. I mean, I started off being an outside linebacker and did that. It was doing that when actually Jimmy Johnson was there as a coach. And so I learned a lot. But then they got another coach came in and they were doing a thing where Alabama, this was in the 60s, had won a couple national championships, and they had gone to a real fast type football, and it fit perfectly for me. It was perfect. So they ended up moving me to offense and making me a center. I weighed about 230, 235, but with that type of football, I became a pretty good player, and I was smart. On the field, I was pretty smart, and so I thought, I can do this. I could teach this. I'd love to be able to keep going. But I'm also smart enough to know that's probably not going to happen. Though, I talked to people in the Canadian League. They had offered me a contract, but I just didn't know anything about it. I didn't want to go there. And then I did a workout thing with Dallas, and I loved it. But that was after about 20 minutes. I think they realized that wasn't going to happen. So I was like a lot of college kids. I was good enough for certain positions, but not big enough.
Yeah.
I was big enough for others, but not good enough.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what I saw in my NFL career. So, I went back to Pennsylvania and I taught and coached in high school for several years, like 3, 4 years. And we were pretty good. I coached on one team that was really good. And then I had a chance. I was coaching a particular high school, and Lee Corso was the head coach at Indiana, and Lee came in recruiting. We had an excellent group of kids that went to colleges on this one team that we had. And Lee came in. As a matter of fact, he signed an offensive lineman. And he got talking with me because I had played against his Louisville team. Though he knew who I was. I was captain, and he knew who I was. And we got talking, and he said to me, "Have you ever thought about coaching in college?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And I said, "Well, I'm taking some graduate courses at the University of Pittsburgh." And I said, so I kind of had that thought in mind. And he said, "Well, why don't you try something?" He said, "Contact the university, apply, see if you can get into grad school, and you'll be able to come with me as a graduate assistant, and I'll find a role for you. We've got a little bit of money. We don't have much, but, a little bit, da-da-da-da-da." I said, okay. So I applied. Next thing you know, I got in grad school, and I packed up. My wife she worked in a laboratory reading slides. She was really good at it, cancer slides, so she could get a job in any hospital, anywhere. Though we went to Bloomington, she got a job. I picked up my couple little dollars that Lee promised me, which wasn't very much, to tell you the truth. In fact, I ended up working a job. That's what he helped me with. But I went to work. I started coaching there, and I enjoyed it, and it was fun, and I had a ball. I loved it, and I got to meet some really good people. And I was coaching defense, and I used to coach all the young kids because remember that the freshmen really weren't eligible back then still, and I loved it. I would have a ball. I'd go against the varsity, like I'd be calling defenses, and I thought I was Bud Carson or somebody. It was pretty cool for me, and so I thought I can do this. And Lee was great to me. Corso was great to me. And I went to grad school. I did very well in grad school. I was not a real good student in high school because I was so young. But here in grad school, I started my master's degree program in January. I have a master's degree in education with an emphasis in psychology. And I finished the program, got all A's before football started. So I did pretty good.
Tell me about Coach Corso. I mean, the guy we've seen for 35 years on TV compared to the coach you worked for so many years.
I love him. I think the world of him. Here's one thing that people don't really get a good feel for. Lee was a much better football coach than what people will ever believe or ever think.
Yeah.
Lee could coach. He knew the game. Now, he's also the biggest showman. He can't help himself. No matter what he's doing, he has to get up on stage. And so therefore, he did such a great job, with that game day program. I mean, come on, that's ESPN's best program ever. That's the best. And he makes it. He's good at it.
Yeah.
And he's such a good guy. He was great to me. But Lee could coach. He could really. I said this I'll tell you a real quick story. We had a coach that Lee had hired a guy. He had been a very, very, very successful high school head coach, very successful I think he was up around South Bend somewhere. And he brought him in to coach tight ends for us and help a lot really with recruiting in state because he knew everybody. He knew every high school guy, one of those kind of guys. And a guy named Bob Otulski was a good man. As a real good technical coach, I don't think Bob couldn't draw a play to save his life. No disrespect, Bob. I hope you're not listening.
Well, I hope he is listening, but still no disrespect.
But we got on. But anyway, we were getting ready to play Ohio State, and we were an I formation team, and we loved to run a play. We had a real good running back, and we had a sprint draw where you start one way and it breaks back. But we almost always had to start it weak toward the split end and break it back because you needed that backside blocker to tight end to be able to handle it. So Bob gets up and he says, we want to make a change. He said, we're going to take our slot receivers. Kid was named Keith Calvin. Now, Keith Calvin He was a good football player, but he was not a big guy. I mean, he was a little guy. He said, we'll move him in or bring him in motion, and he'll be able to block the backside end, and we can start to the tight end and break it back, and then it would bounce and run anywhere. It was called the old sprint draw. Everybody used to run the type of play. Even Ohio State ran. That was their big play with Archie Griffin and those guys. Anyway, he drew it up, and I mean, he's on the board, and he's doing his best sales job ever. And Lee said, okay. Now he had it drawn up, and he had it drawn with because they were a 3-man line, so he had a nose, 2 tackles, and then 2 ends. So he had an E here. He had an E. And he said, see, we'll bring him in motion. He'll block this end, the E, and we can break it back. Lee said, that's pretty good. He said, that'll work. He said, but here's the problem. He gets up on the board, and he takes his little circle that he drew, and he erases it, and he puts a little period, a dot, like a little period. He said, now this is really Keith Calvin. He said, that's who he really is. He said, now, this E, and he erased it. And he said, this is Bob Brzezinski. He was a #1 draft pick with the Los Angeles Rams that year. And he drew an E that must have been this big. He put this big E. And he said, now, how do you like it now? Oh, I laughed so hard. Bob, this poor guy, he got all mad, the coach, he was all upset. I had to run out of the room. I was laughing so hard. But Lee knew football. We played Ohio State one year, and they were loaded. And Lee said, we're going to take the air out of the ball. We went for every 4th down. We milked the clock every time. And here we are in the 4th quarter, and we're winning like 17-14. And it was ridiculous, that we're ahead. Or maybe 7. It was real close. They ended up scoring a field goal at the end and barely beat us. And we shouldn't even have been in the game because we weren't near as talented. But Lee was a good coach, but sometimes he couldn't help himself. He just loved that showmanship. He loved it. I mean, we played West Virginia. I'll give you another real quick one. They had a great wide receiver. We played him at West Virginia, a kid named Danny Buggs. He was really good. Went in the NFL. So in the pregame, all of our defensive backs come out to warm up with big giant fly swatters taped to their helmets. We're going to kill the Bugs. I think the Bugs scored like 50 points on us. We didn't kill the Bugs. They killed us. But Lee couldn't help himself. But he's a good man, and I think the world of him. And he was great to me. He was he never paid me a penny. He never paid me a penny.
He owes you a lot of money, Mike.
Well, as it turned out, he does. Yeah, but he got me a job, and I used to go to work. This was before, well, not during the season, but the rest of the time. Even during the season, one year, I would go to work from 7 a.m. to 11, 4 days a week, and they paid me for 5 full days. This guy was a big booster, and he was building campus housing.
Yeah.
And then I would come over and I'd go to work at the office and do things like that. But he helped me. I remember one day he gave me the keys to his brand new car. And he said, okay, do me a favor. We had an elderly gentleman as a coach that had been there for 100 years, and he had died. And Woody Hayes was coming over to the funeral. And he said, Mike, I want you to go up to the airport, Indianapolis, pick up Woody Hayes and be his driver, guest, whatever, host. So I spent 3 days with Woody Hayes. It was the best. I learned, it was the greatest. He was such a gentleman. He was so smart. And I remember the last day we're driving and he's talking to me, and he said, Coach, you and I have spent a lot of time talking. I said, yes, sir. And he said, I want you to remember something. He said, now you're going to do this. He said, you're going to do this for a long time. He said, don't ever make a decision on a player based on a number. A good number, a bad number, don't do it. Watch him play. See how he can do it. Just because he's the right size, that doesn't mean he's a player. He said, I never saw a weightlifter that was a player. I've seen a lot of players that learn how to lift weights. And he said, don't forget it. Well, I never forgot it. I'm the only coach. There were some scouts, but I'm the only coach that went to Lubbock, Texas to work out Zach Thomas. Zach Thomas was 5. When I went there, he was 5'10 and a half, and he weighed 223 pounds. Well, I also was the only coach he invited to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I sat in the front row.
The eye test matters, right?
He was just a player. I didn't care if he was 5'10". I didn't care. He was 5. He was a player. He made every tackle.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was just a great football player. And so he's still actually, I talked to him. He comes over and goes fishing with me all the time. So we're still pretty close. But I learned that from Woody Hayes because of Lee Corso. So you brought up a guy that I have the deepest respect for.
That's awesome. Before we jump ahead to your NFL career, like any assistant coach, it's a bit nomadic, right? Especially through the college ranks, and yours is a little bit the same.
I had a little. I didn't quite have as much of that as some people do.
Yeah.
At college, I made a few moves, not as many. When I got in the NFL, fortunately, I made very few. I was at Miami 16 years.
Yeah.
And I was at the Jets for 12. So, I didn't make too many. So, but I look at some guys, see their resume, they got like 13 teams. I'm like, how the heck can your family? Though what it does, a lot of guys have gotten to where, they leave their families in a spot, and then they go and work, and then they come back and forth, and they try to make it work. It's not easy. It's tough. It's difficult. I kind of go back to the days we didn't make as much money. We did not even close. But when I first went to Miami, it was really like a family. I mean, we had like 8 coaches, but Don Shula was a very powerful head coach, but he coached. He was the offensive coordinator, and he could coach everything. And so, but everybody was, my contract certainly wasn't even near the last one I signed. It wasn't even close. But it was a great situation. There was a togetherness there, and I admire that, and I love that, and I wish in some ways, we had 8, now they have 28.
I was just going to say, how many were there your last coaching job?
25, 28. It's like, I didn't even, be honest with you, if you put down a big pile of money on a table, I couldn't tell you every name.
Yeah.
I didn't know every guy. I didn't know who they were. After a while, I said, well, who's he coach? Oh, he's tight end. Okay, who's it? And then there's 3 of them. I said, only got one position. You got 3 guys. So I believe in the National Football League, and a lot of it is just being fortuitous. I came through the best time ever that there ever was, and I think there ever will be. Because of the fact the game had developed, it wasn't just a slugfest. Things had really begun to change.
Yeah.
You saw the speed come in, but the great coaches were there. I mean, come on, I'm coaching in the Senior Bowl. We were at Baltimore. We really wanted to coach the Senior Bowl to get a chance. It was our first draft, our second draft actually. So we're coaching the North team. Dan Marino was our quarterback. All right, so we're in Mobile, and it was really it wasn't all the media in the stands. I mean, this was coaches and scouts only. Okay, so it's we're in full pads and da-da-da. So I'm in the end zone. I was helping offensive line, and I had tight ends and then special teams. And I was going to do a drill with tight ends and tackles, okay? And standing right at the edge of the back of the end zone with their pads, their notebooks, with their rosters were Don Shula, Tom Landry, and Chuck Noll. And I'm thinking to myself, Don Shula, Tom Landry, Chuck Noll. And I'm thinking, I'm going to be 5 yards from them. I said to myself, Mike, they're not here to see you, but they're going to hear every word you say. So make sure you have your A game.
Yeah.
Till the last day I coached, when I stepped onto that field and talked to guys, I remembered that standing right behind them were Don Shula, Tom Landry, and Chuck Noll. And I did it for 700 games, and it worked. That was to me the greatest. All those guys that were coaching at that time. I mean, it was the all-star team. Right now, I couldn't name every NFL coach. I don't know who they are.
The way you coached and dealt with players, what was your philosophy? And I'm sure that your degree in psychology probably came into play in coaching quite a bit, I would think. What was your philosophy as far as handling players? Did you treat different players differently that needed a kick in the ass and some maybe didn't?
To a degree, yes, absolutely. Yeah. I tried to be fair with everybody, but I can be very tough. I'm hard. Yeah. I'm not easy, and I'm not for everybody. But I have the deepest respect for them, and I respect what they do, and I respect who they are. I won't acquiesce. And just because because you want to hear a certain type of music, okay, that's great. God bless you. But when you come around me, we're not playing that. and there's certain words that you're not ever allowed to use when you're around me.
Yeah.
Never, ever. And I'll tell them. I said, not in my meeting, not here. You want to talk that way? I don't care what. You go ahead, go home. You're not here. And so, I took it upon myself to try to make them become Phi Beta Kappa at what they were doing. I expected them to learn, and I was gonna. If they weren't learning, it was my fault. I was gonna take it on, and I was tough on myself. I still am to this day. There's still things I go back. I woke up last night because I was thinking about a block a guy missed. I can't even believe it. I'm thinking, how stupid am I? Probably because I knew I was going to talk to you. I'd be talking football, and I'm thinking, oh, and I woke up, it was bothering me. There was to go to my degree a little bit, I'm a big believer. There was a Israeli psychologist, a guy named Haim Janot, and it dealt with children. And his philosophy was that if you see a child in a particular avenue, and you try to treat him according to the end of that goal, his chances of achieving it become pretty good. He said all of a sudden your fourth grade kid comes home and, oh, what a dummy. How could you do that? Well, then he might end up being a dummy. Though I never did that. I always saw them as being pretty good. And I tried to encourage them, and I would, I'd call them out in class, and I'd say, okay, and I'd give them questions. So sometimes it's tough. I never, ever embarrassed them. I wouldn't humiliate them. But I made sure they had to know there was a responsibility with it. And so, and then I tried to come up with, okay, what's the best way? And I think I developed a system that was very, very easy to learn and lightning fast. Lightning fast. I mean, I remember I was, our offensive, which actually Sean Payton's a very good offensive teacher. But it takes a little time sometimes. It takes time. To learn it. I mean, I would watch the offensive and defensive film sometimes, and I'm sitting there on a Tuesday watching our offense. And on the computer, up above, it's got the down and distance, and it has the play. Okay, it's got the play. Well, I'm sitting there looking, I'm reading the play. And I'm reading it, and I'm reading it, and I'm reading it. And it's like, I think it was 19 words. I thought that's longer than the preamble to the Constitution. So I was torturing. How the hell can you? No wonder he jumped offside. He's trying to figure out what you. Oh, so I'm just. Everybody's different. We all learn things differently. Mm-hmm. For me, that doesn't work for me. I want things very precise and very concise, and I love doing it that way. So that's a learning process that I had, and I think I developed it.
So you
well.
got. As a special teams coach, as your career went on, and you got a reputation in the league, even as a special teams coach, I know you coach offensive line and linebacker and tight ends and different things. Special teams are what you became known for.
Right.
Did you still have input in a lot of input in other parts of the game?
Depending on when I was at, back in Baltimore, yes, very definitely. When I first started, sure, because we were doing it. That's where I was when I first got hired. Frank Cush hired me. He had come from the Canadian League after he had left Arizona State, and with the Baltimore Colts. And I was going to coach. I was actually, believe it or not, I was a strength coach because they needed one. I ended up hiring one later on after about 2 years. Thank goodness. I coached. I was tight ends. I helped at the offensive line, and I was Frank's assistant. And so we did all that, and then our special teams coach, this guy, he was really struggling. And Frank, I was out jogging one day, and Frank came with me, and he said he was going to fire the guy. And I said, "Oh, don't do that. It's a lot for what he's trying to do." I said, "Look, I'll take special teams over. I'll take it over." Though I did. Well, that was back in 1983. The league went on strike at the beginning of the year. I had 9 games or something. They were out. And so I started, and I'm looking at everything. And what I learned in a hurry was that there was very, very little innovation. Every team pretty much the same. But there was absolutely zero regulation. You could try anything. Though I developed a philosophy. I was going to teach our return game very much like I would teach an offensive running play. The exact perimeters. And then with the coverage unit, like kickoff or whatever, actually I went to our defensive coordinator, a great defensive coach, a guy named Bud Carson. He's the steel curtain guy. with Joe Green and those guys.
Yeah.
So I
Great
went into
coach.
Bud and I said, okay. I said, here's what I need. Tell me the parameters of blitzing. What's your philosophy? Because I'm going to treat kickoff coverage like a blitz. Now back then you could move guys over, you could do everything. Now you got to line up like you're in the fifth grade, please. And so Bud showed me. So
We'll
the first
talk
thing
about that.
he said the first thing you have to do is establish an edge. So you're never going to escape this way. And so I thought, well, okay, I could use the sideline as my 12th player. That will kick to the side, and I started doing it. And I don't know, I think it was probably the most productive way in maybe in NFL history, what we did. And it worked great, and that's where I got it from. And I took it and developed and changed it and moved on like that. And then each thing that I did, I did a little bit. Matter of fact, they changed a number of the rules because of what we did, the way we did, that type of thing. But I had a ball doing it. And the more I saw, the more creative I could become. Then I would watch other teams that started to do it too, and then I would steal a little something from them. And of course, I act like I invented all of it, but I really didn't. But it was pretty cool. It's fun for me to do.
You spoke about your start in Baltimore, and you speak in your book pretty highly, I think, of Frank Kush, and
Yes.
I think he's kind of gotten it feels like things I've read over the years, kind of a bad rap as a coach. In the NFL, anyway, he maybe never got a chance,
Correct.
but he was a
Correct.
different kind of coach. He couldn't coach today, I'm sure. But what are your thoughts about Frank Kush?
Frank. Here's the thing with Frank. Frank was a very fundamental, basic, hard-nosed, fundamental guy. The fundamentals of blocking, tackling, etc. Drawing up a nickel defense, he had no chance. It's not him. It wasn't who he was. He was that old school, hard-nosed, fundamental, offensive line, step, dip, strike. Those kind. That was his thing, and he was good at that. But he was also very hard and demanding, and players didn't take to it very well, and they turned on him. Actually, they turned on him. And then so I don't think he was suited for the NFL. He was suited for a college-type job, where like at Arizona State. He would take the guys up the Flagstaff and run them up hills, and they would be the best conditioned, toughest team. And he knew talent. He knew how to, he knew players that could play. He was good at that. And but the innovations and all the technical things that came along with the NFL, it probably wasn't really suited for Frank. But he did hire good people. He hired good coaches, and he let us do it. So I think he would have been successful, but the road to it was going to be rough.
So the things you were talking about earlier, when you came into the league and the way it was changing, you came in at the right time. It was the opposite for Frank Kush.
It was just his style.
Yeah.
His style was a little bit that. Now, believe me, don't get me wrong. I mean, though he had Zeke Bradkowski, the great Green Bay quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, I was an offensive coach, and we had a receiver coach, Richard Mann. He was one of the best receiver coaches in the NFL for years. Hal Hunter was a good line coach. I've had a pretty good NFL career.
I would say.
On defense, you had Bud Carson, one of the great defensive coordinators in NFL history. And he's one of the. You name five guys, everybody names Bud.
You mentioned the Steelers with Bud Carson, but wasn't he a big architect of the Jet defense?
He was there for a while, but he was the real guy with the Steelers. That's where he did it all.
Yeah, I remember that.
He's the Joe Green and that great defense that they had, the Super Bowls. That was Bud. Bud was an excellent football coach, excellent, and he helped me tremendously. He and I was inducted, which I'm very, very proud of, into the Western Pennsylvania Hall of Fame at the same time. It was pretty cool for me because that's Mike Ditka and Dan Marino. That's Johnny Unitas. So I'm very proud of that.
That's some good company, Mike.
That's very good. It was good company the day I went in, because the day I went in, it was Ted Marchibroda, Bud Carson, and myself for football.
That's still good company for sure.
It was pretty cool. Yeah, I was very, very proud.
That's awesome. Congratulations on that. Listen, before you started your long run with the Dolphins, and we'll wrap up the Frank Kush part of this, you did follow him to the USFL with Arizona. What was it like in the USFL? Was it going to ever have a chance to make it?
No,
based on what you saw?
Wasn't.
No.
Donald Trump was big and involved in that.
Yeah.
Like President Trump, he just wants to, boom, he's going like this.
Yeah.
He wanted to find a way to get a team or two that would be absorbed into the NFL.
Right.
That was his goal. And so he was going to, pump a bunch of money into it and get some players. Um, there were a lot of good players in it. It was good. Steve Young was playing at that time in the NFL, in the USFL.
Yeah.
Doug Williams was playing in the USFL. Randy White was playing in the USFL.
Kelly.
Come on, it was a lot of good players.
Yeah.
And so I went with Frank out to Arizona Outlaws. I was the offensive line coach, and I had a really good group. I mean, we were good. I had an offensive lineman named Tommy Thayer. He was drafted by the Bears. He played on that great Bear teams. He was starting guard for them forever. He played. I had an offensive lineman named Alvin Powell. Went to Seattle. One of the great offensive linemen. It was a good group. I mean, I had a ball. And Doug Williams was our quarterback.
Yeah.
Who I have tremendous respect for. He was a great guy and a great football player. And so it was fun. I mean, it was fun. I enjoyed it. We were good. We were in the playoffs. We got beat. I think Memphis or somebody beat us. But we were a good football team, and we fought.
Yeah.
Now you just knew that it wasn't going to last because they had that lawsuit, and it was a mess.
Do you think if that hadn't happened, because it's a great 30 for 30, I think you mentioned one earlier, who killed the USFL, and they go into the whole Trump thing. If they had stayed in the spring and there was no lawsuit, did they have a chance if they stayed that way or not?
If they would have stayed, would have stayed. The problem was, when they first got it started, they signed, so many big time players.
Yeah.
I mean, guys that everybody was trying to draft. Boom, they're going over here. Wait a minute, Steve Young. You start taking some really good football players, and though it would have probably dropped it a little bit, but it would have sustained for a certain point in time. It would have sustained for a while, but it was, it's just tough. I'm not a big spring league guy, to tell you the truth. I'm not a real big fan of it. I know this. The game. There aren't that many great NFL players. So don't tell me you're going to have a bunch of great XFL players or whatever, because they're just not. God bless them. They're good kids, but it's a different game. It's a different game. They're not as good.
So you start to really build your reputation. As you said, in the NFL, you stayed at places quite a while for the most part.
I did, yes.
The Dolphins to start with. You coached under a couple of great all-time greats in Shula and Jimmy Johnson for a couple of years.
Yeah.
What was the difference between those two guys? And tell us a little bit about your experiences in Miami.
Oh, they're very different. They're just very different people. Don was the head coach of the National Football League. He wasn't the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. He coached the whole league. He was the man.
Yeah.
And he was brilliant. And he was a real gentleman. He wanted to be tough, but he was going to do it the right way. Rules, everything. He was involved in all of it. And he was excellent. I mean, he called all of our plays. With Marino, he would call the plays with his script, without even a script. He would call it because he didn't want to have to wear his little reading glasses on the sideline or something. He was just so smart. I mean, he could coach it all. You learned. I used to remember when he'd come down the hall, and I'm thinking, oh, please don't come in my office because I know there's something I screwed up. And he was tough, but he was. I just have the deepest respect for him. Jimmy was not the kind of technical guy like Don. I never saw Jimmy really call. I'm sure he used to call defenses, but I never saw any of that. Jimmy was a good Jimmy had a very good feel for players. Very good. Excellent draft, man. Excellent. I mean, he got it. He knew how to do it. And he also knew how to handle it. And he was good at managing the game. He was very good. Jimmy had a real expertise at that. And so that was kind of his strength. Now he was a different person. Jimmy was, Don was always there and grinding with you. Jimmy was kind of in and bam, he'd be gone somewhere. He was just different. But Jimmy did a very good job, put together a very good football team and a dynasty in Dallas, a dynasty that really lasted. And if he had stayed, they might have, who knows, they would have just kept going.
Yeah.
Even Barry Switzer came in and really didn't know much about the NFL and won the Super Bowl with Jimmy's guys.
With Jimmy's guys, right?
Yeah, Jimmy could put a football team together. He knew personnel. He was good at it. He was exceptional at it. And Don had done it for a long time, and he began to run out of gas a little bit. He did a great job with Marino, just a great job. I mean, they were a very good pair.
Mike, what held those teams back? They get to a Super Bowl in '84, I want to say, and get beat by San Francisco. You guys did.
Right. They were better.
I gotta believe. Yeah, they were a great team, but I gotta believe at that point you think, oh, we'll be back. We got Marino. We're gonna be back a lot of times.
We should have been.
But never got back. What was the?
All of it. It's everyone else's fault except Dan Marino. He was the best. My favorite. My favorite quarterback by far. He's the way he worked, but we just struck out. We struck out on defense.
Yeah.
We tried several philosophies. None of them really worked. I was always a big believer that we should have been a very aggressive defense, lined up blitzing, coming after you, attacking you, with the idea if we failed and you scored, wait a minute, hold on a minute.
Sure.
I have to tell them not to do. Hey guys, don't do that. They run a vacuum in my house. I won't be able to hear you.
My wife does it all the time. I get it.
So anyway, because if they scored, and they score, okay, well here come Marino and Duper and Clayton. Okay,
Yeah.
Okay, so what? What you don't want to do is have, like we'd be playing Buffalo, and Buffalo was really good, very talented. 4 Super Bowls. Yeah, I know they lost, but they were still there. And we'd come out and we'd drive down and kick a field goal. Okay, and then they'd come out and they'd 8 minutes and get a field goal. Now the game's tied. Then we come out, touchdown. So they come out, and next thing you know, they beat us 38-36, stuff like that. Though I thought we had to. I don't agree with 1 second with our philosophy, with what we tried to do on defense at the time, and then we also struck out with some players, and we weren't the only team. This was kind of a thing that happened. We had injuries, a lot of injuries to some key guys, and what people don't realize is that some of those injuries were aided by steroids. That's why the big steroid testing came along, because all of a sudden the owners were like, what the hell's going on here? Why are all these guys getting hurt? And they realized that what was happening is that, there was that propensity for it, and guys were blowing up, bigger. So all of a sudden you got a guy's 270 and he should be 235. and so things like that. And so we had a couple of those. Now they came back and they played, of course, but we couldn't withstand. We didn't hit the home run that we needed to hit on defense, though we kind of weren't very good there. I was able to be pretty good. Because I had some pretty good guys. O.J. McDuffie, and I had Reggie Roby, the great punter, and I ended up Pete Stoyanovich, and then Alindo Mari, who's great kickers. But we struck out on defense. We weren't as good, and that kept us from going all the way.
What, and we'll bring up, where is that here, before I get the comments, JB, welcome JB. He talks about, you gave Jim Jensen his nickname. What is Jim Jensen's nickname? I don't even know.
Crash.
Crash, right? I remember.
Because every time he hit somebody, it was like a crash. Jim was a tough guy. He was a good player too. Great kid, great player, multi-talented. One of the great hybrid players of all time. There's some good ones. Man, I coached another one too with Taysom Hill in New Orleans. Everybody's taking credit for Taysom Hill. I'm the only one that deserves it, because he never played. He never even played a play till I got there. I took him on special teams, and anyway, I get no credit. And I should get all the credit, because they're all full of baloney. He never played. He didn't even dress. I don't even know if they gave him a number. Please. And I saw this guy in the locker room, and he looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I'm thinking, who's this kid? And I said, well, he's a quarterback. He's always inactive. He said, so I said, whoa, I've had some luck with quarterbacks. And I went back to Jim Jensen. I had some guys at the Jets too like that. I had Brad Smith, and of course I had Tim Tebow for a little while.
Yeah.
And Tim wasn't a great quarterback, but Tim was a good athlete and did some good things for me. So Jim Jensen was the first. He could do it all. I mean, I'll rattle them off real quick. He could play wide receiver, tight end, halfback, fullback. All right. He could play quarterback. All right. He could punt, kick, hold, snap. On defense, he could play linebacker, safety. In the NFL. Jim Jensen was a football player.
Tremendous versatility.
And Coach
I want-
Shula knew how to use them. He
I
really
do want
knew
to
how
talk about. Sorry about that. I do want to talk about some more of those guys. We're going to go a little over 10. If you're all right, going a little bit
No,
longer.
I don't care. I don't know where to go.
I, I want to say goodbye to our. We do have to say goodbye to our Roku audience, unfortunately, because there is another show that comes on at 10. But we can continue on our other platforms. And guys, we will get to your comments. I promise you. With Coach here in a little bit. As you move on to the Jets, it's an interesting collection of coaches you coach with there, and Herm and Eric Mangini and Rex Ryan. They got to be like 100% totally different personalities.
Totally different.
Yeah.
Totally. It was good. I loved it. I loved it. I loved New York.
Yeah.
We were a good football team. Don't forget, Bill Belichick and Bill Parcells had kind of put that football team together.
Yeah.
That was a good football team. So they had a lot of talent. They went to the AFC Championship game, lost to Denver, but this was a good group. And so, Curtis Martin was our running back. Vinny Testaverde was the quarterback. This is good football players. And wide receivers, Lavernius Coles, Santana Moss, Wayne Corbett. Those guys can play for anybody. They're all good and great guys. On defense, Aaron Glenn, who's now the head coach there, he was a corner. He was a very good football player.
Yeah.
And then you had Mo Lewis, a big linebacker inside, Marvin Jones, John Abraham, a guy named Sean Ellis. Come on, those guys. It really was a good team. And we were good. And then we were battling head to head with New England. I was coaching the game where Bledsoe got hurt and Tom Brady came into the game. I was there.
This is the point where I have to, in full disclosure, I'm a lifelong Patriot fan. So the Jet portion of this interview, I should disclose that. I remember that show. Mo Lewis was I always joke, Mo Lewis is the MVP of the Patriot dynasty.
They should put a little statue of Mo somewhere up there because they weren't going to make the change.
Right.
They weren't the Bledsoe was not going on the bench. Forget it.
He was
not going to happen.
Playing football at the time. You're not benching the guy, right?
No, Bledsoe was a good player, but it wasn't different. And they changed their offense. They went to a little different type, and then of course their defense was great at that time.
Yeah.
That's where they were really good on defense. You had Vrabel and Bruschi and all those guys.
You did beat this team in the playoffs.
We beat them. Yeah, we had good games against them. We either played real well or not very well, but you could watch them develop over time. And then all of a sudden, it became Brady's show, and you got Wes Welker, those kind of guys, and then Randy Moss, and oh my goodness, look out now, look out now, you better get some points up.
What again? A lot of talent in the Jetland, and the question comes again and again. I believe it was back-to-back championship.
Yes, back-to-back.
Didn't win either one. Unfortunately, you never made a Super Bowl, but did go to 4 conference championship games. What that Jet team? What held them back? Because again, you just went off a bunch of talent. Mark Sanchez played okay at quarterback.
Right. Mark got the job done. Mark managed the team. We had a lot of good football players that helped Mark when we were there to help them out. We were a good team. We didn't necessarily have some of the all-stars that some of the other teams have, but we were a good football team. We were tough. We were good on defense, obviously, because we had Darrelle Revis. Reeve was really a good football player. And Rex did a great job with him because he would put him over here and everybody else over there. Look out. Rex was very creative with that and did a great job with it. And I had an all-star team. I had a real good group. We could always be a contributing factor, and that was very important for me. But we just, the quarterback situation, Mark wasn't going to carry us the extra way. He just wasn't quite good enough to do that. It was close. It was a battle. I think if we had stayed the course, what we did, we drifted away from it. Mike Tannenbaum, who actually I think does a very good job on television, but I don't think did a very good job as a general manager. Yeah. Mike, here's what I feel. Mike's in a position where I believe, this is what I think, he really knows the job. That's why he's good on TV describing it. To do within that situation what's really right for you in that role, he didn't get it. He was trying to turn us into the New England Patriots South Branch, and all of a sudden we're getting rid of Alan Faneca and bring in Plexico Burress. Alan Faneca's in the Hall of Fame. Plexico Burress is shooting himself in the leg in the club.
Character means something, doesn't it?
It means a lot.
Yeah.
And so we started to change. I knew I was going. Woody Hayes called me down to his office in Manhattan one time, didn't want me to leave. I said, well, I said, I got a tough choice to make. I said, because if we stay the way we're going with Mike Tannenbaum, I'm either going to end up in Florida in my home or in Rikers because I'm going to have to kill him. I said, because I was so mad at him. I'm being facetious, of course, but
Yeah.
I was really upset. I was really upset with Mike. I did not. And then I think he went to Miami and pretty much did a similar thing. And it's a shame in some ways because he really does know the job. I think he's very good on television.
Yeah.
Because he can explain what can happen, what you should do in your situation. Come on. We lost. We didn't have a lot of the guys that he brought in. They didn't practice. They didn't practice. They were always hurt. They're always on the sideline. I remember one of our officials one time, we had officials, turned around to me and he said, Mike, who are these guys? None of them are going to play on Sunday. I said, don't look at me. Though it was, we let that football team fall apart. Rex was partially to blame for it. Partially to blame. I think if he had to do over again, he would have stood his ground better. You know, we didn't let the cap got away from us. We lost some good guys, and we became not near as good a football team.
Is Rex a good head football coach?
I think he is, yes. I like him. I think he's a better defensive coordinator. But as a head coach, if you get the right guys with him, Rex does a good job. Now Rex is a character, and you hear all the kind of crazy stuff, but Rex is a disciplined guy.
Yeah.
Our football team was disciplined. We nobody was late. We didn't have any. We had good guys. What they did, Rex went out that first year when he came in. We had enough money that we could go out and rent a couple guys to kind of booster us.
Yeah.
So we had Alan Faneca as an offensive lineman. He's like, come on. And we got Jason Taylor to help our defense. Well, he's in the Hall of Fame. Oh, well, we wanted to run the ball. Well, we got LaDainian Tomlinson. Well, guess what? He's in the Hall of Fame too. Well, you start putting these kind of guys together with this good fundamental group, and they're good people. They practiced hard. They were diligent. They were on time. They worked hard. And Rex made it fun enough that it wasn't torture. He could make you laugh. He would say something. He just, let's go on a snack. And he'd be swearing.
I love that line from Hard Knocks.
Yeah, he was good at that stuff. And I liked him a lot. I used to I'd be in the evenings in my office doing my stuff, and Rex would come in. He said, let me show you what I'm going to try. And he'd draw up on the board, and he was good at it. I mean, he would draw it up, and he said, look, they're going to try to do this. And he said, it was so good. And I would watch it on Sunday, and it just tickled me. I think he's right. He's got it. Stuff like that. So I think Rex did a very good job. I think he would be excellent defensive coordinator. I think it would have been a good head coach going back to the Jets, to tell you the truth. I like Aaron. No disrespect there.
Yeah.
I helped him get the job, but anyway.
I mentioned Hard Knocks, and I'm assuming that's the Rex we got. You got a lot of exposure in the Hard Knocks episode. Did you enjoy that experience?
I loved it.
It boosted your profile a lot, I would think.
It did. Well, Steve Zabel was a genius.
Yeah.
He's a genius. He got in front of us one time and he said, okay, here's how it's going to work. He said, I think you're a good group. And I think you've got enough. He was very kind how he said it, enough characters that it will make a very good story. And he said, and I love being able to center it around New York, with the idea. We had Bruce Springsteen do some things, and they had scenes going to subways, and it was pretty cool. They kind of epitomized New York. He said, but if you want to be on the show, you want to be on it, you'll never be on it. He said, be yourself, do your job. He said, we'll catch it. We'll catch it. They would film like 1,000 hours for a 1-hour show. They had cameras everywhere. I carried in my back pocket a little, it was about this big. It was like a little microphone that I had with me 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Now they picked up stuff I didn't want them to say, but they they did a good job. They worked hard and they put it together. And so the stuff that I did, I never planned it. Man, it's just, we are who we are. It's how I talk to guys. I get upset and I say things to them and maybe it just comes out. I don't know where it comes out. It just happens. It's maybe sometimes I'm glad it's directed at someone else, not back at me. But I liked Hard Knocks a lot. I liked it. And Steve came into me at the end. He was very, very kind to me. He actually was starting to suffer a little bit. I remember he had a brain type tumor and it killed him. And,
right around that time.
But he told me that I was one of the best interviews he ever did in his career. I was extremely proud of that.
Well,
but he gave me good advice, and he told me to get involved with the media and what to do. And his advice was to do it in a particular limited area where he thought I would be pretty good at. And it was a little bit tough because he was saying, you don't want to be, I don't think you'd be very good at that. It was good advice. Though I did the New York stuff, and I actually had a ball with it. But I had so much respect for him, the way they conducted it, the way they did business, and they put together. In fact, he personally told me in my office that he would never do another Hard Knocks personally. He said, I won't do one. He said, no, they may do them, but it won't be me. He said, because this one, he said, this is the best that there was I've ever done.
Of the ones I've watched, I think it's the best for sure. And before then, I knew the name Mike Westhoff, but I didn't. I feel like after that, I knew a lot about who Mike Westhoff is.
They gave us an opportunity to be ourselves and to do whatever and that kind of thing. And he also was able to film me a couple times, do a thing that I really appreciated that they did. He asked me if he could do it because normally I would have said no. Like before, not every meeting, but I used to like to dramatize points with stories. I read a lot, and I'm kind of I read a lot, put it that way. I read a lot. I read everything. And I had a computer file that I kept of little notes of things that we'd have a story, whatever it was, a situation. I had some type of story to embellish it. Good, bad, right, funny, smart, sad. And I'm not afraid to, not real long. I'm not going to be up there for a half hour pontificating. And I'd rattle it off. And he showed a couple of those, and I got very, very, very good response from that. And that kind of helped me a little bit. People saw a little different side of me. And because I do care. I want those guys to learn.
Yeah.
I care about how they do. I want them to be able to, to do well. And if they're doing it the right way, what it feels like. I have so much love for that, and I care a great deal about them. Now, if they're doing it the wrong way, I'm going to let them know they should probably call home and tell their mother to go to the grocery store. Their ass is going to be back there having dinner tomorrow night. I could be pretty tough like that. That's exactly what I said, too.
The last part of your career, I have a couple questions. I want to make sure we don't go too long here, but the last part of your career you spent basically with Sean Payton. You talked about the time in New Orleans, finding Taysom Hill, and I'm sure other players. You were out. I feel like you were out. I know you had some health issues and whatnot as well.
Right.
You were out of football for a little bit.
I never left. I never got out because of health issues. I got out. I retired.
You did.
And
retire,
I went to work
right?
for ESPN. I did the radio show.
Oh, that's right too.
I did with right in New York with Anita Marks.
Right.
Oh, and I think Anita's tremendous. I have the deepest respect for her. And I like our show. Our show was good. Chris Canty worked with us for a while. 3 of us did it for a year. Well, we had a ball. Then I did the Jets SNY.
I remember those
SNY
shows.
television. I liked that a lot. And I thought we did a good job on that. I had a great time. And then I got the call from Sean Payton, who I never met. I never met him in my life. I knew he was. I know he had done a good job, but I didn't know him. And he called me. He said, look, we're really good on our football team. And Drew Brees, and their defense was plausible. And he said, but our special teams aren't very good. I said, yeah, I think you're right. And so when I went in there, they were ranked 31st. When I left, they were first. So I helped them out.
Well, and your other 2 championship games were with the Saints, and I got to believe there was 2 tough losses, man. I can't imagine the worst loss.
Oh, it was so difficult.
Both those games, different circumstances.
We were good. We were a good football team. Drew's a great quarterback. Sean taught that offense exceptionally well. Alvin Kamara's a great running back. We had some weapons. It was a good football team. Very good. Mike Thomas led the league in receptions. There were some good players on that football team. And Drew Brees is like the epitome of the National Football League. He's the hardest working practice player I've ever been around in my career. Hardest working. The guy, every play is like the Super Bowl to him. He does. It's incredible. And when everybody's gone home, he's in the field house by himself, going over technique, calling plays out loud, making a thing. The guy's unbelievable, and he did a great job. And we if we had gotten in the Super Bowls, we'd have been tough to beat.
Were they two of the best teams you coached?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. Overall, probably. I don't think defensively they weren't quite as good. We had a couple of teams with the Jets that were a little better defensively, and our running game with the Jets was better because of Curtis Martin. And we were pretty good there. And Kevin Mawai, he's a Hall of Fame center. Come on, this outfit can play. I'm always a big fan of our offense with Dan, because there were a couple of times where that offense with Marino was unstoppable. I mean, it was unstoppable. And Dan was such a warrior. Dan had a sign. I'll give you a good thing. We had a locker room. Dan had a sign in his locker that read, "I'm going to practice every day and play every play." Do you know, until he tore that Achilles, he never missed a play in practice?
Yeah.
Ever. Dan Marino was a warrior and smart and competed. Oh, I used to love to watch him, how he worked on the field and how he'd be upset. He was in a game one time and he got killed. He got sacked. Back then, quarterbacks used to really get hit. The rules, trust me, it's changed. If Dan Marino were playing today, they'd have to pay him Bill Gates money. He'd be getting a Bill Gates salary because he could play. Anyway, he got smashed. So he comes off the field. He takes his helmet. He goes over and he gives his helmet to Coach Shula. He said, "I'm done." He said, "I'm done." It's the greatest, because believe me, they had a great relationship. And he said, "I'm done." He said, "You're calling that whatever." I won't swear on it.
You're fine. Don't worry.
You're calling that crap. He said, "I'll be over here on the bench." So he goes over to the bench. He sits down. He sits back. He crosses his legs. He says, "I'll be over here having a Gatorade." He said, "Because I'm not going back out there and trying to run that shit." He said, "You're calling it. You go play it." No, I had to run to the other end of the field, because if Coach Shula caught me laughing, he'd be mad at me. So I'm thinking, and here's Dan. Sure as heck, fourth down. He comes. Coach Shula gave it immediately, threw his helmet at somebody, And so here comes Dan and grab his helmet, and away they go. But those two had a great relationship. Great. They had tremendous respect. They would back and forth, but it was pretty cool. So to say the best team, that's a tough one. But that same team back in 17-18 was pretty damn good.
Really good.
Yeah, they were good.
Couple of fluke plays. I mean, instant replay maybe ought to cover interferences. I don't know.
That should have that should have never happened. That was not only, in fact, that kid got fined for helmet to helmet.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, what are you going to do? You fine him $20,000 for helmet to helmet? You don't throw a flag? I mean, it's crazy. I mean, we would have scored one and gone to the Super Bowl.
I mean,
we were good.
Yeah, losing championship games is hard no matter what, I'm sure. But because of the way you lost those two games, was one of them worse than the other? The Stefon Diggs play?
No, they're all the same. You just lose them. I lost one at Miami to Buffalo. We just got beat, and we were playing at Miami, and the Super Bowl was at Miami.
Yeah,
and we lost that one. Oh, that killed me. But that's just part of it. I'm proud that I was able to go there. I'm disappointed. I don't think it. With my career, I don't think it affects it. It's not something because I know this. I know there's a number of coaches that coach the same thing as me that have Super Bowl rings. If we played them 10 times, I'd beat them 10 times, because I know I'm way better than them. I just know it. So I don't care. You have the ring, God bless you, but I know I'd kick your ass if I played you. And I'm sorry, because now you hit a button that's a little tough for me. I get a little angry on this one, because this is a tough one for me.
I like to see the real passion. That's fine.
I mean, it's hard, and I would have given anything. But at the same time, I think what I did a pretty good job of is sometimes I think in any profession, you kind of have to figure out what you don't know. Okay, I know I don't run the whole team. I don't. I act like I do. There were times when I did. It changed now. That's why with Denver, these
Well,
past 2 years was frustrating for me
yeah.
because the whole big picture, we had like 1,000 scouts, and I'm thinking this is, we like last year I went back and they had drafted a couple guys, and I was involved in the draft. And I'm thinking I'd have never drafted those guys. I would have not taken. They wouldn't play for me. They're terrible for me, and I was right. They were. So that's just the difference. I loved that role. When that role changed, it's time for me to go home and just be happy with where I was.
I know that you got some issues going on with Sean Payton and the Broncos in general. Did your relationship change over time? Was it better in New Orleans? Did it change in Denver, or was there
No,
always...
that's a good question. No, not really. Not really. Not really. Because I was assistant head coach, and I respect, I certainly respect how hard he works and everything. It's just in leaving was frustrating. That was frustrating because of what I experienced and what I had to, with the reason I left. There's only one reason. I mean, I'm sitting in a meeting. I'll give you the Cliff Notes version real quick. I'm sitting in a meeting on a Wednesday right before Thanksgiving. Big team meeting. My meeting was finished. I sat in the front row where I've been for 1,000 times. Big screen, or going over some comparative statistics between two teams like we always do. And all of a sudden, this big cloud covered the screen. I couldn't see it. Barely could see it. And, I'm sitting there thinking, what's this? Now, I've had TIAs. I've had ocular migraines. I mean, I've had enough medical things. I'm like the medical expert.
You've
I'm rubbing
overcome...
my eyes. I don't have a headache, but it stays the same. So I closed my right eye, and I could see perfectly normally. Perfect. I closed my left eye, and I couldn't see anything. Nothing but this big cloud with like a little tunnel in the middle of it. And it stayed that way for about 8 to 10 minutes. And then it dissipated and went away. Well, I told our doctors, and those guys were great. They did a bunch of tests, and everything seemed fine, It didn't come back. It stayed. It was gone. But then on a plane after a game, it came back a little bit. Not quite as intense, but pretty close. So then when I told the doctors, they said, well, get ready because you're going to get a battery of tests Monday morning. So I had 1,000 eye tests, and then I did an MRI of my head and neck, et cetera, et cetera. They said that the eye tests were good. The blood vessels in my neck, as you get older, we all worry about that. Mine were fine. They said, but, Mike, there's a but. There's a small blood vessel in the back of your brain on the left side that controls blood flow into the right. They said, you've got it's a long word. The word's about this big. He said, what it is, he said, picture it like a little bump in the road. He said, the bump in the road, it won't stop traffic, but it could slow it down, blood flow. He said, if you have a little something in the blood that's going through, like we all have all the time, and it hits that little area, it could cause a nerve to spasm a little bit, and that's what you experienced. He said, it's not, we don't do anything. You can't do anything. It's just there. It's not terrible. He said, but there's a but. If that had been a larger type, maybe a little piece of clot or something, and it hit there and it lodged for a little bit, he said, you would lose the sight in that eye. Well, that scared me. That scared the hell out of me. And he said, they know that stress can be an exacerbator. And he said, you coach 700 games, you got to think about this. And I said, I don't think about anything. I'm going home. Because that's enough's enough. And I know what that was like. Will it happen? Probably not. Could it happen? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so that has been, that's never easy. But anyway, that was the reason I left. And
Do you miss it, or you're...
No, I do. There's certain things you miss. There's certain things I don't miss at all. The way things have evolved and the way that situation had evolved at the time, I don't miss it at all. I don't, because it just had changed. And I'm not saying that change. It's just it is the change. It's partly me. Because of what I like doing everything, and I don't want that to change any. And so so sometimes I know I wasn't going to keep doing it forever. I wasn't even going to coach last year. They talked me into coming back.
Right.
And in a lot of ways, I'm happy I did because we were pretty good. I like a lot of the guys I had. I'm a big fan of Marvin Mims. I think he's a two-time Pro Bowl guy. We helped draft him, so I'm proud of that. Had a good kicker. Will Lutz made 1 million field goals. He did a great job. So there were some good things. I think Denver's a great stadium. The ownership is very efficient. I think they did a nice job. The fans are great fans. I'm not a big Denver fan, to tell you the truth. I love the mountains. The rest of it, I don't like at all, to tell you the truth. I'm not a fan. I wouldn't live out there to save my life. But a lot of good things. There were some good things, and I think they'll be fine. They got a good young quarterback, and they should be. But it'll be interesting to see, because because everybody, you have to constantly move and grow, because you either move them one way or the other. You're never going to stay right where you are.
Exactly.
That's the National Football League.
Mike, did you have aspirations or desires to be a head coach at any point?
Absolutely. I should have gotten it. I'm frustrated a little bit. I'll always be a little angry. After Jimmy Johnson was there, when I finished with Jimmy, my special teams, we weren't good. We were great. We might have had as good a unit as there's been in the history of the NFL. I didn't have the great return guy at that time, but O.J. McDuffie as a punt returner led the league. We were really good. So Dan didn't want to leave. He wanted to keep going. So he came to me and he said, Mike, he said, I'm going to tell Wayne Huizenga, the owner, that he should hire you, because Dan knew I was going to keep Dan. Okay, so I put together a thought. I said, okay, this is what I'll do if I get this head coaching job. George Hill was our defensive coordinator, very good coach. We had Zach Thomas. Our two corners were Pat Surtain and Sam Madison. Jason Taylor was playing an end. The other defensive end. It'll come to me in a second. Anyway, they're number one ranked defense in the National Football League. So we're good. They're number one. They're first in the league. All right. On offense, we had Dan. Now, we weren't quite as good. We had a couple of things there that needed resolved. Okay. Now I had the best unit in the league. We were top ranked. Though I had a friend of mine that had been coaching, was still involved coaching the league, and I was going to get him to come down and take my job. But I would help. We'd work together and do that, because they had been very good. Then what I did, I had a friend of mine that I knew, I went to school with, that was helping coach. He was like a running back type guy at the Indianapolis Colts with Peyton Manning. So I was going to name him as the offensive coordinator to put in that Peyton Manning type offense, where Dan would have got in the shotgun, taken the ball, and thrown it or handed it off right now. Mm-hmm. Jimmy wanted Dan up under center. Dan had that bad foot. That Achilles. It never quite. He to this day he can't stand and raise on his toe. Mm-hmm. The Achilles is too loose. So that's why he wore the big boot. It artificially raised his foot up. All right, and he had to play with that. But put him in a shotgun and just throw the ball, you can't stop the guy. Though I think I had a great plan, and I think I would have done it. And then, next they hired a guy that, the guy, I'm not a fan at all. I thought he was terrible.
Is that Wonstadt?
I don't want to get into it. I don't even want to say his name. You ever don't want to say somebody's name? That's the one.
Yeah, I've been there.
I don't think he was. Come on. He took two programs that were pretty damn good, and they were thinking of dropping football when he left.
Yeah.
The Bears and the Dolphins. He just wrecked them. He didn't know it. He just forget it. Anyway, plus he fired me. I only had the best damn year in the league, and I got fired. I probably would have fired me too, because of the way I got so mad at him. I used to treat him sometimes, but he deserved it. I didn't. Anyway, the good news was, though, I went to New York.
Right.
And I absolutely loved it. I loved the people. I loved the Jet fans. I loved living up there. I lived on remember the old Jets used to be over at Hofstra.
Yep.
All right, and we had a crummy little place, but they fixed it up. Herman Edwards did a nice job of trying to make it a better place. He did. It might have been his best thing that he did, being a decorator, because he sure as hell couldn't coach very well. He's actually better on TV now, because I think he learned something doing it, because he did not handle things very well. But I loved it, and we were good. We were a good team. We're in the playoffs. We're in the playoffs almost every year. I had a ball. The Jet fans can be off the charts. I mean, if you're good, it's a great place. I used to love. My girlfriend and I would leave Garden City, where she lived and I lived, and we'd get on a train and go into Manhattan to go to dinner. I used to love it. The people were so great. We were good. It was fun. They were so kind to me. They were just nice, and it was a great experience. I loved game day on Sunday. And then we went out to Florham Park when Woody moved the team out to New Jersey, and that was a great place to live. So my years there were very, very positive. They got a little bit ruffled at the end, which is a shame, but I loved that. So yes, but I really thought at that time I was very prepared. I think I understood situations very well. I had very good experience working with Don Shula and Jimmy Johnson. I think I knew how to manage the clock. I knew how to handle things. I had a philosophy on defense and offense that were concise, that would work together and not oppose one another. And I think I would have done a good job.
There's a lot of great coaches have been special team coaches. Marv Levy, John Harbaugh. I can think of a lot of guys. Bill Belichick had a background there, right?
Bill did some of that. Yes. Yeah. It does help you for some of the preparation with because you got to coach everybody.
Yeah.
And you also have to be a reactionary guy. Like there's some offensive coordinators that to become head coaches that really they'd rather complete a pass than go to heaven, and so they don't have a clue how to manage the clock and run the ball and da 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 da.
Yeah.
Well, I think I would have done that very well.
I'm sure you would have. Let me get to a few of these comments before we let you go, Coach. I think you alluded to this a little bit quickly earlier. The new kickoff rules, which I think are ridiculous. Can we legislate violence? Not violence. Violence is a word. It's a violent game, right? You can't legislate it right out of the game.
That's part. It all came about to try to lessen the violent collisions.
Right.
That's how it happened. They eliminated. Remember back the old day with the big wedge.
Yeah.
So they cut the wedge out. You went from having 4 to having 3. Then you went to 2 and 1. Okay. The way you would double team and then the trap coming from a particular angle. That's something that I did exceptionally well. That became illegal. Though they wanted to cut that back. Though really they come up with kind of this hybrid. It's got some benefits, but they didn't quite figure it out. They think there's still way too many touchbacks, because when the average starting field position is about the 29-yard line, why not just kick a touchback and take the ball in the 30?
100%.
Though that's silly.
Yeah.
Some people have tried to say that they'll make all of the fouls either be, start from the 20 or 25 and be the same instead of the 40, the 30, and the 20. Okay, that doesn't make any sense. That's not going to work. What I would do, if you want to have this, I would move the kickoff back to the 25-yard line. I would keep the touchback. Ball comes out to the 20. So if I kick a touchback from the 25, I'm a winner on defense. I win. Now, what it'll do, it'll encourage teams to run the ball out of the end zone a little bit, because you don't want to. So if it goes 4 or 5 in the end zone, you'll run it out. Right now, if it goes 1 inch in the end zone, they don't run it out.
Right.
Because the blocks are all occurring at the 30. If you're going to run the ball out, what I would do to also make that more realistic is right now you've got all your coverage guys lined up at the 30. Okay? Then you've got 5 yards, and then in the next 5-yard line, you line up your next 9 football players. Okay? All right. I would take that distance and move it back 10 yards. I would let the return team be a little bit deeper, because when I'm 5 yards apart and I have to start to go back, I can't run back very far because the guy's right on top of me. So what you're seeing they've taken the game from what it was and they've turned it into a travesty.
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing that's what everybody's doing, everybody goes back a couple yards and they turn around, they grab and they hold you. They could be if you watch Dallas film, just watch the Dallas film. Every guy holds every play. Every guy holds every play. We call it the lobster. They take their arms, they put them out, and they grab the guy. Now, if they get a penalty, okay. If they don't, they might run a touchdown. They think it's pretty cool. I think it's a disgrace. But if I put them at 10 yards, I can get back a little bit, and I actually have a chance to make a block. Now, if I grab and hold, throw the flag.
Yeah.
But I think I can create a run. Now, if you're kicking off from that far back, I think you could still do it. If you kick out of bounds, make them go at the 40. Make it a real tough penalty. And the touchback, if you blast it out of the end zone from the 25, well, you deserve to be on the 20. Who cares? So I think there's some things. I know I've spent a lot of time talking with Joel Buster, who's the smartest man in the NFL office. He kind of semi-retired, but he's a genius. And he's trying to put together some things to present to the competition committee, and hopefully it'll resolve a little bit.
Let's get Mike Westhoff on the competition and rules committee. How about
talked
that?
about it. It would make too much sense. That would be too smart. I think I only lead the league in touchdowns ever. Don't ask me what to do.
It's the NFL. We aren't going to do everything that's smart. That's for sure. We know that. As a special teams coach, you must have found yourself coaching some crazy players. Who are some of the crazier guys you could think of?
Oh, crazy. That's hard for me. I don't know about crazy.
You got to be crazy a little bit to be a special.
Oh, a little bit, yeah.
Right?
Hardest. Well, something. I signed as a free agent. Larry Izzo, he went to the Pro Bowl. He's the special teams coordinator with the Commanders. Has done a great job. I talked to those guys. He and the head coach and I'm going to go visit them in their training camp. My son lives in D.C., though they're converting all to Commander fans now, the 3 boys. And I'm going to go to their training camp. Larry asked me to talk to his guys at night, which I will do. So I'm a big fan. But anyway, he was a reckless kind of guy. The hardest hitter I probably ever had was a young man named Bernie Parmalee. He's still coaching in the league. Bernie was really tough. He'd knock your head off. He was a good player. So, I've had plenty of those kind of guys.
Larry Izzo is a guy, one of the 2 guys I wanted to ask you about that I have.
Because he's in New England, he's only got like 100 Super Bowl rings.
The Patriots, right? Larry Izzo is a great special teamer. Matthew Slater is a great special teamer.
Great special teams player. Maybe a candidate for Hall of Fame someday.
I was just good. This is where I was going with this. Matthew Slater should be going to the Hall of Fame, and other guys who's played special teams as their main function, right? Word stars.
Well, they all. To me, there's quite a list, but they all got to get in line behind Steve Tasker.
Another great guy.
Because Steve Tasker's the best that ever did it.
Yeah.
I mean, he could change the game by himself, and the fact that he's not in, that just kills me. Because I had to go against him, and I love him.
Yeah.
We coached the Pro Bowl that year. I had him as one of my players, and he was the MVP of the Pro Bowl the year. Now back then, it was a real game. This was 1990 or 91. It was a real game.
Yeah.
And you got good money, big money. So I was trying to win the money. I took it, and I turned them loose. We blocked kicks. The San Francisco coaches were furious with me because I didn't care. I just wanted to win the damn game. But Steve. So, yes, there are plenty of guys like that. Matthew Slater is another one. He was a really good football player that did a lot for that team.
Yeah, it's time for these voters to wake up and realize that. Michael got to talk about Bill Arnsparger. I don't think you ever crossed paths with Bill.
I knew him. He had been at Miami before I got there. I knew him, and he was a very, very good football coach. And, Coach Shula talked a lot about Bill and liked a lot of things that he did.
Good. We shall talk about you being a hockey player. That's an interesting comment. We talked about this a little bit. You're quoted as saying the championship loss against the Rams was the toughest loss of your career. We talked about this a little bit, I think. So.
Yeah, I made a mistake in there also. Not that it cost us, but they had a good football team. They had a great punter that could throw the ball like a quarterback and was a great fake threat. And so I devised a scheme, and I think of everything I've ever drawn up in my career, this was the best I ever put together. It was simple and it was really good, but I made one mistake. On one side, I was going to rush 6 all the time, and I knew I could pressure this guy. And he punted almost every ball to his left, our right. Though I was going to double the wide guy, gunner, we call them flyers, but on the right side and single the left. But what I did, I should have flipped our personnel out there because I took a proactive player and I lined him up in a reactive position. And that was a mistake. And it hurt us. He made a mistake. And he practiced it well. We knew it was coming. We're calling it. But I screwed it up. I still wake up in the middle of the night thinking, what the heck did I do that for? And then he had an issue where his wife had gotten sick or so. It was a couple things, but if I just had switched sides, it didn't really make that much difference in the game, but it would have lent a positive thing to us that did not. It gave a positive thing to a little bit, not much, but a little bit. So
we have to reflect
I'm disappointed.
I got a couple of these questions. I'll put one up. We don't have to talk too much about it if you don't want to. Like, as a Viking fan, Rick's not a big Sean Payton fan. Do you want to elaborate on that at all? You don't have to if you don't.
No, I don't. No,
I know you got.
I think sometimes people see, he gets angry on the sidelines and has yelled at players and coaches and things like that, and that comes across poorly.
Yeah.
I talked to him about that actually. He didn't do it to me. Because he had yelled at me on the sideline. I'd never be in the league again. I guarantee there's no question about it.
He's a great coach, though, right? I mean,
he's a very good coach.
He's a great
very
coach.
good, and he works hard. He's an excellent teacher. Excellent teacher. I mean, what he does, he really loves to run the whole show, on the game day. And he's good at it. I don't think he's great at something. I think he's okay at managing the clock. I think his challenges are probably mediocre at best, but he knows it, and he works at it, and he practices it, and he takes great pride in it. So, but then consequently, sometimes like you'll see him on the phone, he'd be screaming at the defense, and I mean, come on, they moved up to 7th or 8th, and I mean, the offense is still wherever they were. So that's why people get that thing about being the jerk and stuff like that, and so I don't. That's silly.
Fair enough. JB was a big Finns fan. It still is. I know from him coming on my shows when we're talking about football, and he talks about he hated it when you went to the Jets. I would think any Dolphin fan probably did.
I went to the Jets because I got let go. I'd have stayed there as the head coach. Instead, I get fired. Oh, what's interesting? I got fired. And back then, we used to have a thing where the group, the special teams guys, all had a thing at the end of the year where they picked the coach of the year. I was unanimously elected coach of the year and got fired. Unanimously. So, what do you want me to tell you? Think that guy knows what he's doing? I don't think so.
You can't figure that out for sure.
So I went to a place that I ended up loving, and that was a good situation. But I would have if I could have stayed at the Dolphins and had a chance to execute that what I was describing to you, doing the defense a particular way, and that type of thing. I think it would have been a very interesting challenge. I think I would have held my own.
Yeah. Danny's got a good question here. Who were the special team coaches you looked up to? There was a lot of good. Frank Gantz was a great coach.
If I had to come up with one name, it would be Frank.
Yeah.
Frank Gantz. And Frank helped me when I was young. Frank was good. Now, Frank wasn't really very innovative, didn't do a lot of things, but he did them exceptionally well. His team were not penalized. And so I think I learned that discipline and that structure from coaching teams from Frank. The innovation and putting things all over the place, that's me. That wasn't him. But he's one of the, if I had to pick somebody, it would absolutely be Frank Gantz. Because be honest with you, a lot of the guys before me, I don't think were very good, to tell you the truth. A lot of them really weren't. There's a couple guys that were pretty. Rusty Tillman out in Seattle did a real nice job.
Yeah.
But he could teach rushing the punter and covering kickoffs. The rest of it, he couldn't run the ball to get across the street. But he was good at that. And so, those are some things. But Frank was a real disciplinarian and a person that I learned a lot from.
I remember as a kid, the Vikings had, this is back in the 70s, had great special teams, Matt Blair and some guys that were played their positions full time, but they blocked a lot of kicks. I couldn't even tell you who the special teams coach was then. I don't know.
And knowing those guys, it was probably Bud Grant. Bud did.
Yeah, might have been, right?
But he did everything. I mean, he was, I remember going against his, it was my first game in the National Football League. First game. We were playing in the Hall of Fame game. Yeah, the Hall of Fame game. We were playing the Hall of Fame game up in Canton. And on Monday night, it was, as a matter of fact, Howard Cosell was doing the game because I actually met him. I got a chance to, I said hello to him. I thought it was kind of cool. Anyway, and Bud Carson, of course, is our defensive coordinator. Let me just hang this up. Tell him I have to call back.
Sure, we'll let you go here in a couple minutes.
No, I just, it's 1 second. I'll call you back in 10 minutes. Anyway.
I love you.
And we're standing there. Here comes. We're on the field early because we're all college coaches. What the hell did we know? We're out there early. We're practicing. And the Vikings aren't even there yet. They're not even at the stadium yet. Well, here comes their bus. Now, this Viking team, I mean, this is Bud Grant. I mean, these are the real deal, these guys.
Yeah.
And Bud Carson sees them come in, and he looks at myself and another couple of guys were standing there, and he said, "Okay, guys," he said, "tonight you're going to find out what you don't know." And was he right? They killed us. They beat us. They were so tough, so fast, so organized. And as we're still dragging bodies off the field, they're in the bus going home. They're leaving. I said, we're not even off the field yet. They came in late, came on the field late, ran through a couple drills, beat the hell out of us, and went home. I said, Bud Grant's the real deal now. He's really a coach. He knows what he's doing. So I got a real education from Bud Grant. It was getting my butt kicked up around my neck. He's pretty special.
Guys, I apologize because I've got to get going here in a second. I'm going to go through a couple other of these real quickly. There was some thank yous. Jay Train, who is a big James Martin, big New Orleans fan, he thanks you for your time in New Orleans and what you contributed there. I'm not sure what we got there. Dante Hall.
Dante Hall, I loved him.
Yeah,
Kansas City. Although he took full advantage of a particular rule that if you signal for fair catch and the ball hit the ground, the signal was off and you could pick it up and run. He ran 2 punt returns like that during the season, went to the Pro Bowl, and I fought against it, and they changed the rule the next year. So I loved him, but he beat out my guy that he beat. He went to the Pro Bowl. It should have been us. So there.
And a little equal time for Peyton. JB says that he met him when he was with the Giants and seemed to be a super nice guy. So we'll give him his equal time. And Rick says thank you for coming on. Mike, nobody beats old school coaches for their honesty and storytelling, and I agree 100%. Mike, I appreciate every second tonight. I took you a lot longer than I planned on.
Oh, it's fun. You did it. You made it fun for me.
Well, I'm glad.
You did a great job. You call anytime. It was a lot of fun for me. And the way you did it, you brought some things out. I think it takes you kind of what maybe people would like to hear and what they'd like to hear, what they'd like to see. Because it's a tremendous game, and I'm very, very proud to have played a small role.
Well, you have played a bigger role than you probably admit to, but listen, the book is great. Put the book up. You said you had the book?
Yeah, I do.
Let's put the book up since I lost my page to share when I had to pop out of the thing. But we'll
I even have the hardcover. Here, I'll give you the hardcover.
There you go. Figure it out.
Figure it out.
My 32-year journey while revolutionizing professional or pro football special teams. Great job. I think
it's pretty cool that I'm proud of it on the cover.
It's Roger a great read.
Roger Goodell on the cover said, the National Football League, Mike Westhoff changed the game.
He did. Great. It's a great read, too, guys.
I'm pretty proud of it. I wrote every word. I had some help. A guy, Barry Wilner, helped. He did the interviews for me, but I wrote every single word, and I had a little bit of help. Believe it or not, a girl I went out with, my girlfriend at the time, was very bright. She's brilliant, and she can word things exceptionally well. In fact, I actually was talking to her today about wording a letter thing I have to write. I said, I need help. Can you help me? So she was helping me on the phone. That was pretty cool. So anyway, I'll give her some. Patty Tenalia, I have to give her a little bit of props because she actually helped me with how to get into a couple of things that I kind of got stuck on. So I have to give her some, because she always complains that I didn't give her any props. But so now I'm giving it to her.
Tremendous stuff, Mike. I appreciate it. You've had a great career. We went long, but 32 years. We didn't even cover. We feel like we didn't even cover like a pintle of it. So great
I think
job.
It's 30. I'm going to take 34. I think it's 34.
34. I will maybe change the title and when
whatever it is. I don't know. It was a lot of games, and I had a lot of fun, and I was very, very happy and proud to be a part of anything.
If you come out of retirement again, can you do me a favor?
No.
Do it in New England.
I can't. No. I'm a fan up there. I think I have a lot of respect for New England. It's a tough place to play. Great fans. Fans.
Yeah. We've had a blast. Mike, I've had a blast. I'll thank you again. You have a great weekend, and we'll be in touch. Maybe we'll do it again.
Okay. All right. Again, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Guys, the great Mike Westhoff. Yes, honest. You want honesty, you get it from guys like Mike Westhoff, as Rick said. Awesome job. Appreciate every minute. I know we went long. Guys, we'll be back on Sunday with the Sunday Stream is Consciousness. Keith Engle for TGI Sport Talk. Have a great Sunday. Bye-bye.
Football season is here, and SeatGeek is my go-to for buying tickets. Now, with SeatGeek, every single ticket is backed with their buyer guarantee. We've all had plans change, and when you can't make it to the big game, SeatGeek has you covered. They're the only ticketer that allows you to return your tickets ahead of the event for credit with SeatGeek swaps. So when things come up, I know that my tickets won't go to waste. So what are you waiting for? Download the SeatGeek app to maximize your possibilities and shop live events with confidence.
You're listening to Keith Engle, the host of TGI Sports Talk on the National Streaming Sports Roku channel.